Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Wednesday, 2 p.m. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman. It's a walkthrough day for the Eagles, so a chance for us to take a little bit of a step back. A stock report. We know Zach loves his stocks. We're going to talk about that. Eagles made a signing after we spoke yesterday. We will unpack all of that. Plenty to discuss. Zach, how you doing?
Doing well. Excited for the show. Looking forward to talking about players who are raising their stock, lowering their stock, the new addition on the offensive line, and having a good show with you. I got a few text messages from people a little concerned about yesterday's show. I said, look, it was the first day of pads. The pads are on. The pads are
Yeah,
on
the
the show
testosterone
too,
is
right?
flowing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, now it's a walkthrough day. It's a chance to kind of catch your breath, right? And so that's what today's show
I think
is.
we did learn a lesson yesterday that the post-practice shows, it's a bit of a frenzy, right? Because we're making our way from the facility to the show. We're trying to write out our notes for allphly.com as well. So there's not as much prep time. There's so many notes from practice that you want to get through. I think we need a little bit more structure on those post-practice shows moving forward. So we hash that out. We will do that moving forward.
I love it. There's like there's like a relationship advice sometimes where it's best when you make it, the other person's idea, and that way it's easily enforced, right? Because like I've been calling for structure for 5 years, right? Uh, so I was thrilled now that you've come to that conclusion, and we will have structure in the show. It's awesome.
Do you think part of the relationship advice is then rubbing it in and making a very passive aggressive comment about how we should have been doing this all along? Do you think that works? Do you think that's the advice that you might get?
I think I'm
Because
excited.
now I don't want to have any structure. That's what you have just done.
All right. So I don't know where to go with that other than I'm excited to talk about the stock up, stock down today.
I was, and now I'm not. Now, Zach, you are also stepping in on the PHLY Sixers show after
Mhm.
this, right at 3 o'clock with Derek Bodner. So you're pulling double duty. How you feeling about that?
A little nervous about that. Honestly, I mean, I'm a huge NBA guy, but I outside of the Eagles, which is getting the most of my attention, I've been paying a lot of attention to baseball the past few weeks. I've caught up with Olympics basketball, but since free agency, it has not been at the forefront of my mind. But I do have a number of Sixers opinions, and Derek structured a very good show that I am ready to attack with enthusiasm and information.
Okay. Uh, Here's a question for you before we get to the Nick Gates edition and
Yes.
the stock up. What did you make of the final episode of the Giants Hard Knocks and the screen grab
Yeah.
that made its rounds last night of the Eagles having drafted 4 players who look to have been medically red flagged by the Giants, including Quinion Mitchell?
Sure. Appreciate the question because I was thinking about this one, and I thought it was my least favorite of the episodes so far. I thought the show itself was outstanding. I thought this one was my least favorite, although I did have some opinions from it. To answer the question succinctly, I found that board interesting there because, like you said, 4 players red flagged. Dan Duggan from The Athletic had a tweet up that suggested that the red flag means injury concerns. And if that's the case, Quinion Mitchell, I don't know what the injury concern was around the draft. Perhaps that's part of the reason he slipped. I don't know. And then there was this little
I
McMahon.
just want to say I don't know for certain that is the actual
Sure.
way that their board looked. Like I think there's a possibility that was sort of retrofitted after the fact. Like I think a lot of the graphics are not exactly the graphics you would see on the screen if it was real.
Yeah, good point. Because like Latu didn't have a red injury concern there, and you
Yeah,
would
there
think,
weren't enough colors to
sure,
really make it accurate. It felt like, but
yeah. And
either way.
then if so, the players who had the red flag who the Eagles drafted, and there were 17 red flags on there, and 4 of them were drafted by the Eagles, right? So it was, and I think 17 was the number. Uh, Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Anaya Smith, and then Dylan McMahon, and then the purple flagged ones, which reportedly it would indicate measurement or size concerns, or Trevor Keegan and Will Shipley?
You make anything of that?
It's interesting. I mean, we've maybe they have certain requirements for arm length or something like that. Uh, at running back, what would it be for Shipley? I'm trying to think where he which measurement wouldn't fit up to the standard. It's a good
His
question.
body size, probably.
Well, no, but he's not like a small running back. Is my point. There are other.
He's not a big running back.
I mean, how big's Tyrone Tracy relative to Will Shipley?
I don't know.
Tyrone Tracy, who they drafted, is 5'11", 209. Okay, Will Shipley is 5'11", 209. So my guess is there has to be an additional measurement that would factor into that. And I don't know what the Giants' information is. Anyways, so a few thoughts there. Overall, I thought the show was well done. I liked how, going into day 2, you kind of see the process. You're hoping, they're hoping for one of those corners, Lassiter, or McKinstry to fall. The one quibble, or that I have with the Giants' approach there is there's this idea that because you have 6 picks, you can't trade up, as if you're not able to trade down the next, in the 3rd round to recuperate picks. He's like, we can't give up now look, if you don't think it's worth trading up, that's one thing. But the idea going into the day, we're just going to have to let the board speak to us, right? And we're not going to be able to trade up. That I don't totally buy that, because you can always trade down. I thought their strategy was okay in the 1st round, right? You don't need to move down from 6 to 15 if there's a player there that you really like. And it was clear Malik Neighbors is someone that they really liked. I don't know who they would have landed at 15 that would have excited them. So I don't have an issue with them not taking that Colts trade. Who do you think the Colts were trading up for? Neighbors or Adunze? Is that
I
how
would
we're
imagine.
operating? Yeah.
I would imagine it was
Not Bowers.
Neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah. I know they like
Yeah,
Bowers,
because
but not Bowers. Yeah.
you think, well, if it wasn't Neighbors, then you would think that they would have maybe been able to make a trade up. But also to move down from 6 to 15 for a second and a future second doesn't feel like quite the overpay that you might expect to move down that deep from
True.
6. I thought that the process wise, I mean, the show continues to sort of lay bare how unimpressive the entire process is. But I thought it was from a planning the draft standpoint, the way that they flashed back to, well, if we come out of this draft with a wide receiver, a corner, and a safety in the first 3 rounds, they're they're pre-fitting the positions. You talk about letting the board talk to you, that doesn't seem like good process.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think some of the acknowledgments, Andrew Phillips with that's the last corner there that you feel can contribute before it's the developmental part of it. That's the way teams think there, right? We talk about that often. There's tiers, and drop off in tiers is important. So you try to get something before the drop off in tiers. But I think you're right. You can't say we need to come out with X, Y, and Z. We need to come out with a wide receiver, a corner, right? I don't think that's the best way to think.
And then from a production standpoint, I thought that there was a missed opportunity. Show us we always hear about how hectic and crazy undrafted free agency is, right? That's this unbelievable hectic dance of everybody passing phones around and making calls. Show us that. Give us 5 minutes of that unfiltered. That would have been good stuff.
True, they went straight from the draft to the bar, right?
Yeah.
And then the wives are waiting there, and then
Joe Shan's wife, credit to her, several drinks in.
And then the very next day, he's doing staff evaluations.
Didn't you think that was so weird? Don't you need a little bit of a time to step back?
Exactly.
To evaluate? Obviously they didn't show anything that was negative, but
no, but now, as you know as well or better than me, the scouts live around the country, right? So they're
Right,
in
so they're in
town for the
town, right,
draft.
exactly.
So
But
you're meeting with them, but they can't stay until Monday. It's like you're
yeah,
fitting in the staff evaluations before your daughter's birthday party. It's I'm like, so anyways, but no, I really enjoyed this show, and I'm gonna get on my so I don't know if I would call it a soapbox on this or not. I I don't like when you see these media members being like, they should never allow, I can't believe they're allowing them to show this. Like, this is why teams should never have cameras in. No, like, let's do more to desensitize the idea that these aren't state, when you show stuff after the fact, the world's gonna go on. Like the Giants organization's not gonna fold because they had Hard Knocks watching this
I mean, it
process.
might.
I mean, there might be some questionable selections in there. I thought the rationalization about the 24, 25-year-old running back, I didn't necessarily love. Unless you're saying, look, he's going to be a one contract guy anyway, so all that matters is
I
his
actually
age,
don't think
24
that
to
was
20
that bad of a pick.
year.
I mean, the
Yeah.
the
Fifth
explosive,
round.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
fifth round. Exactly.
I'd rather have
Um,
a 24 or 25-year-old running back who is that old and only spent 1 year at running back and looked good than a guy who was in college for like 6 years and was like middling production. I think I mean, we're talking about a fifth round pick.
yeah, and like I just said, if you're operating under, I don't want to say the assumption, but the presumption that your running back pick is just going to be a one contract
I
guy.
don't think you're ever drafting a running back with a second contract in mind, to be fair.
Exactly. So then the age doesn't bother me as much there either.
Okay. All right. Yeah. After the show yesterday, just after the show, our show, the Eagles made a signing, adding Nick Gates, the veteran interior offensive lineman who has sort of an inspiring injury recovery story. Very nasty injury he suffered with the Giants. Went on to play for Washington, so he's continuing his tour around the NFC East. Eagles obviously not a great history of players who have been around the NFC East joining their team, but that's neither here nor there. Before we get to Nick Gates, Zach, I do think so. They released Mario Goodrich to make way for Nick Gates, and a good reminder of like the arc of the summer and how quickly things can change. I mean, last year Mario Goodrich was the feel-good story of roster cutdown day, making it onto the roster as the backup nickel after Zach McPherson had suffered a season-ending injury and they didn't have another backup nickel on the team. Goodrich gets thrown into the mix early in the season, doesn't look super great. They end up putting him on the practice squad, and he was absolutely buried on the depth chart this year. So things can change quickly. A good reminder of that. Just because you make the team doesn't mean you're going to stay on the team. But how will you remember the Mario Goodrich era?
A few things. First off, I also think it's a good lesson that a strategy of having like a bunch of undrafted corners and late round corners and just hoping one emerges is probably not a sound roster building strategy, because he was part of that group from a few years ago. Don't you remember when they had you? What's that?
Luigi Badpour.
Yeah. No, but they had your Tay Gowan and Kerry Vincent Jr. and who was Josh Blackwell might have been in there, right? I'm trying to think of. They had a handful of like.
I think you're conflating the.
Am I conflating
the mid-season additions and then the following undrafted guys? That's
I thought, but I
the same group.
I did think that was a talking point. Look, it's hard. It's hard to make it in the NFL. Like Mario Goodrich, a nice guy, hard worker. I remember talking to him last year. Like you said, he makes the 53. It's a good story. And then it's also, it kind of goes into, we pay so much attention to who makes the 53. They make a roster move a few weeks later, right? He's then on the practice squad. This is a hard business. And I get it here. Like I was watching Zach McPherson in practice yesterday. And I'm like, Zach McPherson, who was a real solid special teams contributor for the Eagles, fourth round pick, a guy who going into last year competing to be backup slot. Like he was a contributing member of the Super Bowl team. He's probably in his hotel room at camp saying like, how am I going to make this roster?
You can't get on the field.
Yeah. So this is a hard business because, and every year, like I'm proud of our show. You and I think we've built a really good show.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if every year they just draft new people to come in and try to take your show from you, right? It's a hard business. So yeah, you feel from Eric Goodrich there, but that's the name of the game. Curious to see if he catches on. And I texted you today because I am curious your thoughts in particular as someone who I think more than anyone in the media corps has a good grasp of the offensive line depth and kind of what goes into their thinking here. Why do you think Nick Gates was a priority for them here?
Well, you don't need to gas me up too much, but obviously I have been thinking about this. I think there are a few ways to read it that are potentially interesting. I think the most likely thing is they have suffered an injury with Tyler Steen. They had a couple guys banged up yesterday. Landon Dickerson might be out for a few days. They've had a couple other guys banged up. They need bodies, and he was the top guy on their PFA list. I think that's probably the most likely answer. They had guys pulling double duty yesterday. You need 15 guys. You want 15 guys to get through practice. But
well, if I can interject real quick, there's a type of player you can get. You can get the journeyman offensive line, or I'm sorry, you can get the undrafted rookie, a guy who kind of fits that profile, more of the camp body, as opposed to someone who has, 5 years of NFL experience, significant starting experience,
sure.
signed a decent contract a year ago with Washington.
Sure. And so then you look at the rest of what you've seen. You could make the case that they don't like what they've seen from Max Sharping. They want a little bit more from that spot. I think the way that I read it is right now, Mekhi Becton is in at right guard, right? And has been up and down. They're going to see how he does. I have been impressed with Matt Hennessy so far. And with Matt Hennessy right now focusing on right guard as the second team right guard, they don't have, Brett Toth is the nominal second team center at the moment. We have tried the Brett Toth at center experiment for a while. It has been underwhelming. Dylan McMahon is the third team center practicing with the second team in team drills. I think they're excited about him. But if they don't think that Dylan McMahon is necessarily ready to be the backup center on game day, and there's a chance that Matt Hennessy is going to be the starting right guard, which maybe is just a little bit more likely than they thought a couple days ago, then maybe you do need a veteran backup center, and that could be Nick Gates. It could be that they want to see Nick Gates at right guard, see if he can be a competitor there. Maybe the Steen injury is a little bit more significant than it seems, and they have been underwhelmed with Mekhi Becton. I think the rational takeaway is that they, not to overvalue the new 90th man on the roster, but I think they would like to see a little bit more from the interior offensive line. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. They got overrun a little bit.
Good point. Just to kind of give the audience a quick Nick Gates synopsis here. He has 37 career starts, 6'5", 312 pounds, has played centering and guard like Bo is discussing here. A year ago, signed a 3-year, $16.5 million contract with Washington with $8 million guaranteed. So certainly he is someone who was cut, is someone who is available, but he is not your camp body journeyman type. He is a legitimate NFL player.
Well, yeah, he's still going to.
Or he's been, yeah. I'm saying this is not like signing. I'm sorry to throw this it's just the name that comes to my mind. Malcolm Bunch, right?
Shot stray in the direction of Malcolm Bunch. That's tough.
No, I mean this is someone who's started and played in the league.
Yeah,
and still relatively young, right?
Yeah, I'm curious to see where he lines up tomorrow. I guess my guess would be second team center, maybe. We'll see. Maybe third team center. They'll let Dylan McMahon be the second team guy for now and get Gates acclimated. Maybe he'll be at right guard. I'm curious. So definitely interesting as the offense line starting right guard. Before we move on, Zach, and get to the stock report, it's time to talk about our friends at Bet365. And I can pull this up in a minute, because with Bet365, it's never ordinary. Not once, not ever. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide and streams over 780,000 events each year. Early payout offers across NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. Bet365 has pioneered live in-game betting, and today they offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 different sports. At Bet365, they don't do ordinary, and they believe every sport should be epic, and that's why you've got this incentive to join and open an account. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use the code PHLY365 to sign up, deposit $10, and claim your offer. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, and check out our boosts to see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. They've got the boosts. They've got the same game parlays that really incentivize big payouts. So lots of options at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Boom, boom, boom.
To the right of me right now, I have the Phillies game on. And I imagine there are a lot of people who are spending their afternoon watching a Phillies-Yankees game, enjoying it with some
soccer game on.
enjoying it with some friends.
Let's go Sam Coffee.
And throwing back a nice cold Miller Lite. Because a lot has changed over the years. One thing that hasn't, it's great to watch day baseball. Another thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. So what is the great thing, or the best thing about the original light beer? Miller Lite sparked this debate in 1975. We still have not settled it. Miller Lite keeps it simple. They have undebatable quality, great taste, and only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. It's a light beer that tastes like beer. Less filling, only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. You don't need to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces, fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
All right, Zach, let's get into the stock report 1 week into camp. Now, I want you to, when you're giving me stock up and stock down, I also want you to tell me if you're going to be buying or selling that person at that price. So you've got the stenography of how their stock has grown or receded over the past week. And I want the prognostication of whether it will continue to grow or recede. So why don't you go first? Give me your first stock up.
Good wrinkle. Did not have that in my notes. So I like that. I'll be a little impromptu. First stock up, Thomas Booker. No, I'm joking.
That's
although
pretty
stock is up. Yeah, I know. Just trying to have some fun, loosen up. Jalen Hurts. And look, I get it. This
off the board that this would be your first stock up. But I honestly I do not I do not disparage you. I think it is very reasonable.
No, exactly. And I did, in all earnestness, I put thought into what we were saying on yesterday's show, and I think there is a medium between talking about or focusing on Jalen Carter, focusing on Thomas Booker, and I'm saying that was leading with Jalen Hurts here. And I need to point it out because how much time did we devote in the spring to the summer with questions about Jalen Hurts, right? So if you were selling Jalen Hurts stock in the spring, you probably could buy it at a better price before training camp, and that stock's appreciated during the first week here. I think he's looked good. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. The ball is not touching the ground that often, although a little more in yesterday's practice. I think he looks quicker than he did a year ago. Clearly, he was playing with a knee injury a year ago. But
I noticed a little bit of a hitch in his step yesterday, like just a little bit slower yesterday than he was at the start of camp.
Ooh, okay. I mean, I've been kind of talking on the aggregate, but that is something I will be paying attention to. And then the reality is, for all that we've broken down about the team, we all said the big part of this season is going to be how Jalen Hurts takes to Kellen Moore's offense, right? And I get a controlled setting is only showing you so much. And when you're facing against a defense that has a game plan specifically geared toward you, a lot could change. But through 5 practices, I think his stock is up. And this is probably a hold. I don't know if I would buy more stock of him right now, but I think whatever shares you own, hold it, take some dividends on it, treat it like 3-4 years from now, you'll be in good spot. Compound interest, right?
You can't just throw out vocab terms and pretend like it means something.
I'm not throwing. No, compound interest means that it's what compound interest means, right?
Yeah, I know what it means. It doesn't
Yes,
really apply here when I'm asking you
it
to buy
absolutely
or sell, but
it
that's okay.
absolutely applies here because, Bo, if you bought it at X, okay, and now it's X plus Y, okay, and it increases 1.5% tomorrow. It's not increasing from S, it's increasing from X plus Y, compound interest, okay?
So you're saying you would buy. You think it's going to raise. His stock is going to continue to rise.
Yeah, but I'm saying I would hold the shares that you have and see it continue to grow.
That's not,
I wouldn't. No, because there are other players here who I'm like, buy more stock in them, like really, but take this, buy more stock. I'm saying the Jalen Hurts stock, what you own is because you didn't buy it at like a bargain. We don't need to get it. Bottom line, you should feel good if you have Jalen Hurts stock, the appropriate amount. You have the appropriate amount.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no doubt that we were, I think, concerned is too strong, but it was very much on our radar that Jalen Hurts did not look super awesome in the spring. So there was a big question about what he was going to look in camp. He started camp looking awesome. Those first 3 practices were like dynamic. Everything was on. The ball was coming out on time. Everything was accurate. He was making the right reads. I think the last couple days have been a little bit slower just because the offensive line has not really held up a little bit, but he has seemed to react to that well. And so, yeah, importantly, he has looked good and better than he did in the spring. NASDAQ closing time, all that good stuff.
Okay.
Opening bell. Okay.
All right.
I'll give you my. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Okay, I'll give you my first stock up. I'm gonna go. I think this is. We don't need to go into this too much. This is a little bit obvious, but Keely Ringo, the fact that he is getting the majority of the work as the first team corner opposite Darius Slay is a positive development for him. He has looked good with those reps. Isaiah Rodgers has looked good too. Both of those guys continue to look good. I feel like that's a little bit less interesting just because we. So I will go instead. I'll say C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I do think has flashed lately. Had a very good practice yesterday around the ball. He does read things quickly coming downhill, both in the run game and the passing game. That stands out. The energy stuff, hard to say how much that matters, but he has been the most vocal guy on the starting defense. So the Eagles are getting what they paid for in that sense, in a thing that they talked about feeling like they needed. We can debate whether that's an overcorrection or not, but they are getting that. And I think that C.J. Gardner-Johnson has looked good, and importantly, has been healthy for a guy who has had trouble staying healthy over the past couple weeks or past couple seasons, rather.
Yeah, I would agree there, and I do think that the movement skills that he has is an asset to this offense, like especially relative to what they were at safety a year ago. I think the athleticism has been apparent. So that's a good one.
Did you see his Twitter discussion of the Madden safety ratings?
I did not.
What
did he say?
He was chagrined not to be in the top 10 of the Madden safety ratings, and I generally really could not care less about the Madden ratings. And as they come across my feed, I mostly gloss over it. But I did look at the safety ones. They have Kevin Byard as like the 5th or 6th best safety and an 87 overall. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah. I imagine that's going to be corrected quickly with the ratings adjustment. We
Okay.
had a babysitter here last night. Um, Emily and I went out to dinner,
Nice.
and uh, and so got home and Reed played the babysitter in college football,
Nice.
and and let the babysitter be Georgia, and she like and she beat him, and so I get
Nice.
home and I'm like Reed, it was her first time playing, and I'm like, "How did you lose, man?" And he's like, "I was Kansas. I let her be Georgia." I was like, "Still, she hadn't played before."
Wow.
Um, yeah, I shouldn't be throwing my
Reed's not allowed to have dinner tonight because he lost to a girl in college football.
well, it has nothing to do with the gender. It has everything to do with the fact that he's playing and it was her first time, but he's gonna get better from the experience. I promise you that.
You
All
promised me
right.
that? I was
Yeah.
so worried. Thank you.
Uh, so my next one up is the thumbnail for today's show, and that is Keely Ringo. I think Keely Ringo's stock is up. And the reason I think unless did you put him in there because you thought his stock was down? Um,
No, but I did just talk about him.
you were talking CJ Garner Johnson.
Yeah, the preamble to that was
Yeah.
Keely Ring. Okay,
Okay.
go.
Okay. So then I will go on from Keely Ringo then. Okay. I thought your pick was CJ Garner Johnson, but anyways, I'll move on from Keely Ringo. I thought we could have extensive more conversation about Keely
Go
Ringo,
ahead.
but
Go
I'll
ahead.
go.
If you have
No,
things to
no,
say
no,
about
no.
Keely Ringo, to tell me about Keely Ringo, but
Now here I will go with Zach Bond. I'm going with Zach Bond,
yes,
and this the stock was in decent shape during the off season, right? But the fact that he's been the first one up at a linebacker 5 straight days here says something to me. I'm actually not convinced. So to use your thing, I would sell the stock right now,
I
right?
agree.
You bought it. It's appreciated here. I would sell it because I am not certain that he is going to hold the top
Pump and dump.
cornerback, the top linebacker spot. Um, I still think that Kobe Dean can make a push. If you watched our show on Friday, not you, but the audience watched our show on Friday, you made the case for Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at some point this year. Uh, I thought you outlined the Zach Bond case that day better than anyone I've heard, which is New Orleans saw him for 4 years, did not they were invested in him. They drafted him in the third round. They had him in the building for 4 years. They never said this is the guy who should be our starting inside backer, right? So I tend to think that a a player who is taking on that role with you, it needs to be someone who like there's a strong reason why he didn't start elsewhere, or maybe there was injuries, or maybe there was a contract thing like the Devin White situation. Maybe there was a Nigel Bradham thing where he underperformed. In Zach Bond's case, he could have taken the starting job in with the Saints. Could not take that over. So I don't think that he's going to be as big a revelation. I can see him starting early in the year, but I would imagine someone like Nakobe Dean or Jeremiah Trotter Jr. can push for that spot.
I think you said it well. There's no doubt that from the start of camp to now, the stock is up because of the role that he has had. But I am skeptical that it will last this long. As actually, and I do think that he's looked okay, but that's well said. I will give you the very low hanging fruit that corresponds with this. Can't make the clump in the tump. Stock down right now. Oren Burks, like he at
Yes,
some point he's gonna have to get on the field. Um, Probably out of his control. You know, he can only do what his body can do. But the longer this goes, the less likely it seems that he is going to have a spot on the roster. He's going to have to fight an uphill battle if he's not back within the next few days, I would say.
I don't want to jump ahead of our shows here. I imagine we'll be doing an all 53 show at some point. But if you were making your 53-man roster right now, would Burks be on it? Would Van Sumeren be on it? Linebacker TBD to be on it?
I think right now, if I was doing it, uh, it would either be Van Sumeren or neither of them, and it would only be four. If I was doing it right now, I would have
Eh,
the top four. You know, Devin White, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and then maybe Ben Van Sumeren right now.
If I can build on this conversation, but kind of take it into a different direction a bit. We
Sure.
didn't talk much yesterday about the kickoffs. We haven't spent much time at all talking about it. I thought Rick and Covey gave an interesting answer about how some teams are going to be using like DB type bodies. Some teams are going to be using DN linebacker type bodies, and he thinks the returner is really going to be based on like the matchup or kind of the personnel, depending on who's out there, or at least that's the way I interpreted what he said. Ben Van Sumeren, do you think that he's going to be a key part of the Eagles? Like, do you think his ability on special teams, he does look active out there? Do you think that's going to help his roster chances? Do you think there's so much unknown right now about the kickoffs that we still don't have a sense of like who the special teams demon's going to be?
Well, I don't think that the unknown nature of the kickoffs necessarily changes who the best special teams players in general will be. There's no doubt that Ben Van Sumeren's special teams ability will help his chances of making the roster. I think the Eagles will have to decide whether it's more likely that he gets claimed or not, because if he doesn't get claimed, they can put him on the practice squad and elevate him and see how things shake out after the first couple weeks. I don't know necessarily if they're going to be super concerned about losing him on the wire. I mean, the kickoff stuff, it's fascinating from a this is something new standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think you will see a bit of a push and pull early in the season with, heavy personnel out there versus lighter personnel out there trying to maximize speed. But I also think we can probably overstate its impact and how much teams are going to worry about it from a roster building standpoint, because especially early in the season, if you don't know what to expect and you want to just see how things play out, I mean, you can just kick it out of the back of the end zone and give them the ball in the 30. Like, you shouldn't lose a better player at the bottom end of your roster because you are super concerned about, oh my gosh, what is the other team going to do here?
Yeah, and it's both sides of the kickoff too, right? So it's something to think about as well. It's when you're returning, and it's when you're defending that you obviously need to factor in punt returns as well and punt coverage as well. But yeah, I do know Van Sumeren's someone that they really like from a special teams perspective. I don't know how that's going to factor into the roster math. There's obviously new faces across the board. But Oren Burks is someone who's been a productive special teams player in the past. That's part of why he was signed. But I think you brought up a good point about the fact that Oren Burks has missed time here.
Sorry, I lost you for a second there, but
is it my connection or your connection?
General gist.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know. All right, do you have one more? Do you have one more stock up?
So the stock up, and then there's obviously a corresponding stock down, which we can get to after the break. But a stock up I have is Grant Calcaterra. And I have his stock up because I thought there's going to be more of a competition for that number 2 tight end job. And Grant Calcaterra seemed to run away with it. Now, I don't know if it's performance related per se. Like I'm not watching these practices and saying they need to get Grant Calcaterra on the field. But I do think Grant Calcaterra is someone who he's been the clear number 2 tight end, anecdotally watching it, but also comments from speaking to the players, from hearing press conferences from, Kellen Moore and the Grant Calcaterra as the number 2 tight end. I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion, but it's kind of the way the conversation shifted. The amount of work that he's taking with the ones when they're in 12 personnel. Again, I thought we would see more CJ Uzomah in there. I thought there might be maybe more Albert O. They signed Albert O quickly during the summer. During the offseason. It's been very much through 5 days, Grant Calcaterra is the number 2 tight end.
Yeah, I think this is where there's a distinction between like stock up for, like you said, just the usage and the role that they seem to have versus the level of play. And like I don't think that Grant Calcaterra has particularly done anything super notable in the offense. I don't think he's looked awesome, but it is certainly worth mentioning that he has taken like all the reps as the number 2 tight end. But this seems to me more stock up as a function of how he's being used than necessarily what he's done.
True, but that's my exact point. Is if I think about what I expected the tight end depth chart to look like in camp, I thought this was going to be a competition
Mm-hmm.
more for that number 2 job, and I think he's comfortably ahead on July 31st.
Yeah, I think this might be one where I'm selling.
I would too, and I got to say, Donald Parham's still out there.
You're bringing the material today. I appreciate that, Zach.
I like when I make you laugh. That's what I'm shooting for.
This is another one that we have talked about, but I'm going stock up just on the movement skills and what I've seen from Jalen Hurts as the rookie 3rd round pick. I was expecting there to be a little bit more of a rawness to him, a long runway ahead. And right now, I see a guy. I mean, it's only been 1 day in pads, but it seems a guy who looks the part. And I will not be surprised now if he's an actual member of the game day rotation. Like if you would ask me a week ago, I would have thought that Jalen Hurts had a good chance to compete for the PHLY and just be a redshirt player. Spending the year learning how to play the position and getting acclimated to the change in physicality. And he does not look like that to me right now. He looks like a promising player who, like body type wise, movement wise, might be able to make an impact as a rookie.
Good point. Just want to give a quick shout out, Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly. I think you need to respect bits, if you will. Like if someone said I'm going to do the which player has impressed me the most story, and asking doing the player survey, I'd be like, what are you doing? That's Bo's piece, right? Well,
first, to be fair.
Yeah, Dave Z does a great job every year with the rookie diary. He catches up with someone throughout training camp, and it's like surviving camp. And he's doing Jalen Hurts this year. But I point this out because Dave has an impressive history in picking the players that he did TJ Edwards when TJ Edwards was the undrafted rookie. He did Jordan Mailata when Jordan Mailata was the 7th round pick. And they obviously both went on to be good players. So perhaps he finds like the most charismatic guy who helps, but it has a good track record. So his first one came out today, and I was reading that, and I agree with what you said about Jalen Hurts. I was relatively skeptical. I don't want to say skeptical of the player, but I said a 3rd round pick on a guy who is a project, and he's less of a project than I anticipated for the reasons that you mentioned. The movement skill jumps out.
Well, Zach, don't sleep on Dave Zangaro, and especially don't snore when you're lying next to Dave Zangaro. That's what I think. And that's what they think at Sleep Healthy PA. That's what they can help you with, because at Sleep Healthy PA, they are committed to helping Philadelphia residents stop the snore and find solutions for sleep apnea that will allow you to rest well and improve your health. What causes sleep apnea? It's that choke point in the throat that causes snoring, kind of like a kink in a garden hose. And Dr. Andrew Cohen can help you unkink that bad boy, because he is board certified in dental sleep medicine, and his staff will work one-on-one with you to provide first-class care that will meet your needs. Many physicians are not equipped to provide other options outside of CPAP machines. And if you're tired of a CPAP machine that's too cumbersome and, making too much noise and distracting your significant other from being able to sleep, well, give Dr. Andrew Cohen a call. He's based in Jenkintown, and he has worked for years to educate dentists across the country on his personal approach to helping those with sleep apnea. His team is committed to stopping the snore, so tell him PHLY sent you and receive 15% off your initial workup. The process is a 2-hour initial exam split into 2 sessions, the information gathering, and then the reviewing of results and sharing of recommendations. Once again, if you are experiencing sleep apnea and are looking for a custom solution to stop the snore, reach out to Dr. Andrew Cohen at sleephealthypa.com or call 215-337-2501 and tell him PHLY sent you.
I was up late last night waiting for Jim Salisbury to send in a story because I was eager to read it. And the story you can read on allphly.com right now if you are a diehard member. and it got into some details of the Phillies at the deadline, including a high-profile player they were hot after, and what their plans would have been for him had they made that deal. So you can check that out on PHLY right now, but you can also check out our practice observations. There's going to be a story up in the next day that I'm working on. There's Charlie O'Connor has his mailbag up right now. And the great thing, too, is in addition to premium written content from the best collection of writers in the city, you also get 20% off events. You also get a discount on merchandise. You get a free shirt when you become a member. You get access to the members-only Discord, which we call the PHLY Lounge, which I'm monitoring every day. Head over to allphly.com now and join the best sports fans in the city.
All right. Give me your first stock down, Mr. Berman.
First stock down, so Cooper DeJean. And
fair.
This is a clear one for me. I thought going into camp, he was going to be the starting slot. And right now, I think, as you outlined well, Quinyon Mitchell could be in contention for that. And Cooper DeJean, even if he does play like in the first month or two of the season, he's missing valuable time here. So I expected him to play early, and I think this missed time is going to affect his rookie year. Now, it's not going to totally shelve him. And I think back to guys like Odell Beckham Jr. and Justin Jefferson, who had historic rookie seasons and missed time early in their seasons. But this is valuable time that he's not out there.
No doubt about it. But an opportunity to buy.
Well, that is true. Yeah, so I suppose the stock is down, but it's a good chance to buy. Well said.
There you go. Another rookie, underwhelming start to camp at a position where the Eagles could use somebody to, make an impact and flash, and that's Anaya Smith, who coming off not really getting to do much in the spring because he was hampered by an injury during the draft process, has not really flashed from what I've seen. And usage-wise, he's with the twos and the threes, but you also don't really see like dynamic movement skills yet. He also, he hasn't had a chance to get the ball in the open field, so we can't see that. I'll be curious to see if he's able to do stuff in the preseason games. But for now, I would say stock down week for the first week of camp for Anaya Smith.
I'm with you there. He's on my list. I don't want to be anchored to opinions that I had on draft weekend, but my opinion hasn't changed. Is that if you don't have standout size, speed, and you don't have standout production, okay, then you really need to be a standout on the practice field, right? Because like what are you buying right now? And so you're buying the football player going into a different opportunity, and I don't think he has ran with that yet. I thought when they drafted him, there's a chance for him to be the number 3 receiver, and he hasn't taken that yet. It's 5 practices into a rookie season. We'll see what happens in camp, but I do think the stock's down, and this is not a stock that I am buying right now, even at a lower price.
Interesting. All right, who do you got next?
Yeah, so I have Kenny Pickett here.
I got him too.
Okay, and reason being, like,
small hands.
Well, that's not why I have the stock down. But it's funny. I was on Anthony's show, and VG said, "How's small hands Pickett doing?" or something like that. Here's the thing: is that if you took all context out of it, if you came to the Eagles practice, you didn't know who they were, and I said to you, one of these guys behind Jalen Hurts was a first-round pick, and is the front runner is going to be their backup quarterback this year. And the other one was a late-round pick who is more of the developmental type. You would think that McKee is the first-round pick, who's the backup, and you would think Pickett's the developmental type. Now, again, it's 5 practices. I watched the Steelers preseason last year. I thought Pickett looked really good in the preseason. Maybe there's something to the fact that he's a gamer. Maybe there's something to the fact that he's acclimating to the personnel around him. I can't say acclimating to the offense because they're all acclimating to the offense, right? but this is new personnel around him. That said, I expected to see more from Kenny Pickett during training camp than I've seen.
I'm trying to be generous here and think back to the backup quarterbacks that we have seen throughout training camp over the past decade or so, and it does seem like a difficult job. Last year was Marcus Mariota was looked worse than almost anybody in camp. Even Gardner Minshew, who was a good backup quarterback, did not look super great in training camp. Nick Foles, notoriously not a great practice player. I think maybe there's something to be said that job in particular is pretty difficult. There's probably a case to be made that like defense tends to be a little bit deeper.
Yes, exactly.
Than offense, and so you are up against it. Like if the offensive, the second team offensive line is probably going to be worse than the second team defensive line because the second team defensive line plays, right? And if the second team wide receivers are out there, those guys don't get on the field that often. And corners, maybe there's not a huge difference between who are the starters and who are the backups. So maybe it is just a difficult job, and nobody's going to look great there. But I think what is telling is that compared to Tanner McKee does look better. He seems to have a better tempo in the offense. He seems to have a better understanding of where the ball should be going and when it should be coming out. He has, to me, thrown a more accurate ball. So, like the Pickett stock down, I think, is a little bit more about the comparison to McKee than it is about just how he has looked exactly. But there's no doubt that he has not looked like a first-round pick who the Eagles are going to be thrilled to have at this unbelievable price for the next 2 seasons. He just looks okay.
And to build on what you just said there, that is 100% accurate about backup quarterbacks, and it's something that I've talked about and that I believe there's more mixing and matching personnel on the back end of defense than there is even on the front end of defense, right? Than there is with the offense. You're playing with the second team offensive line at all times, right? You're never playing with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. There's a clear drop-off at wide receiver beyond A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So the personnel, and more than anything, I would say quarterback, you're in practice, your personnel matters so much. If your receivers aren't making plays on balls, if your offensive line's not blocking and you're under duress, right? There's only so much that a quarterback is able to do in a practice setting that relative to, I think his personnel matters quite a bit. So we will see. But yeah, the way you framed it compared to Tanner McKee is the key part of that.
All right, Zach, in a couple minutes, we're going to let you get going so you can prep for the Sixer show with Derek Bodner. So with that in mind, if there are any questions that the sickos in the chat would like answered over the past 5 minutes of the show or whatever, put those in, and I will do what I can. But give us
Julia there are some in the starred part of this. Jalen Hurts, number 15 on the NFL Top 100. I'm not a big NFL Top 100 guy. It seems to be a high rating, but it's there.
Okay. Do you have one more you'd like to get off your list before you go?
The one guy in the stock up that I didn't get to was Keely Ringo. No, it was Will Shipley. Because and again, maybe it's like the stock's where I thought, but Will Shipley's getting work with the ones, and Will Shipley he's been a part of this offense, right? Like compared to Anaya Smith, who you would think, look, a 4th-round running back and a 5th-round receiver, they're both day 3 picks. Who has a better chance of playing with the ones? Your 5th-round receiver or your 4th-round running back, should be your your 3 running back, compared to Anaya Smith, who should be like your 4th or 5th receiver. Anaya Smith hasn't really mixed in much with the ones. Will Shipley has mixed in with the ones. And I stand by what I've said, that if Saquon Barkley goes down, I think Will Shipley would get the plurality of the snaps at that position.
Okay. I'm not so sure I agree with that, but that's okay.
Okay.
I mean, he's worked with the ones when Saquon's been out. But
No, he's worked at the ones even when Saquon's been in. Like,
Yeah, I think you're totally within your rights to say stock up Will Shipley. He's been involved. He's made some plays in the passing game. Let's see what he looks like when the pads are on.
what's it gonna take for you to pay Will Shipley? For you to like Will Shipley? I feel like you're anchored.
I just said you're
Okay.
within your rights to say stock up.
Okay.
He's looked solid.
Okay. Yeah, you said it like reluctantly. There was like a reluctance to your admission there.
Not really.
Okay.
It just let's see it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Zach, go ahead and have some fun with Mr. Bodner. Talking.
Yeah. Once this show's over, if you want to jump over, the great thing about PHLY is we have programming throughout the day. We'll be talking about Joel Embiid and Team USA. We'll be talking about players in Philly sports who have had their legacies heavily influenced by a specific game, a moment, a playoff run. We'll be talking about whether there's like legit or manufactured concern for some of the questions about the Sixers. I might have some KJ Martin trade ideas to throw out there. So you can check that out. And I will be changing the channel over to the Team USA basketball game in the corner of my eye as well. So this was fun. I look forward to seeing both you guys in studio tomorrow. I should say both of you in studio tomorrow. And I will do better tomorrow.
Thank you, Zach. Go have fun. I will continue and give you a couple more stocks, some stock tips. A player who we have talked about, but has not super impressed. We talked about it yesterday. Bryce Huff. He has a difficult job going up against Lane Johnson so often, but for the guy who is the highest price addition of the offseason, has not made a ton of plays so far. So that's a stock down, but one where I think it's probably fair to buy. And then another defensive player who part of the core four last year. Yeah, all of those guys looking awesome. Reed Blankenship continues to hold down the safety position. Tanner McKee looks awesome. Christian Ellis is probably going to win DPOY with the New England Patriots this year. But Moro Ojimo, you were hoping to see, I think, a big jump year two. This is a guy who's probably the safest of the non-starting defensive tackles in terms of making the roster. I would like to see a little bit more from Moro Ojimo so far. So somebody to keep an eye on. Let's check out these starred questions now. A lot of questions about I don't know how to pronounce this. What is this? The Osprey? I don't know what that is. So I'll have to get with Julia on that. Not sure what that is, although I will say that there is a possibility, there's an idea percolating that could potentially answer that question, but I will not commit to it or not. Any other questions from the chat before we go? Reminder that tomorrow evening is the Eagles open practice at the Link. The only time that you lay people have a chance to see the Eagles before the regular season. At the Link, we will have a show at 2:00 beforehand, and then a show at Friday to talk about what we saw Thursday night. Big chance to see Nick Gates's debut for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, more questions about this thing that I cannot necessarily discuss, but we're thinking about it. Also on my list, stock up Matt Hennessy, stock down Max Sharping. But I think we'll have plenty of time to talk about those things. So that'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. We will be back once again tomorrow at 2:00. Go check out Zach and Derek Bodner talking Sixers, root on the U.S. women's soccer team with Sam Coffey. And that's pretty much all we got. For all of us here at PHLY, we will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.